We are live. So yeah, guys, the title of this video is gonna be well, I haven't been to sleep, guys, in about 3 days now. For some strange reason, I don't quite know why. When I don't sleep very much, I feel more like myself. I feel more like the person I'm supposed to be. If I sleep too much, I've noticed that I tend to suppress a lot of my feelings have become controlled. I'd be just not in tune with myself. So sometimes I just set up 2, 3 days at a time, 4 days at a time, even 5 days, 6 days. Shit, who's counting? I think the most I ever stayed up one time was about 9 days, 9.5 days. I think it was. Of course, I was quite delirious after about day 4.5 or 5. I was quite delirious, but I feel like it's good for the soul sometimes. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, you got to sleep every day, 8 hours, blah blah blah," and it's probably some truth to that. But um, I tend to notice that less is best with me, and when I don't sleep, obviously it's like how I say, there's a threshold, right? It's kind of a cost benefit analysis. I'm not saying you shouldn't sleep chronically because that'll definitely fuck you on up a little bit, if you know what I mean. But no, sometimes I feel like you got to kind of reset yourself. You got to kind of tune yourself up a little bit, like it's like a car, right? Look at us like cars, in a lot of ways. And it's like, sometimes you got to take the car out on the freeway, hot rod it, drive it across the country, really give it that Italian tune-up that it desperately needs. You can't keep the car in the garage all the time, be anemic and slow, and just barely take it out. Engine don't even warm up, and I feel like the human body's like that in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, for my mental health, I really feel like there's times where I just need to be up and I just need to be feeling. I need to be feeling what I'm supposed to be feeling, right? And at the dungeon, at the solitary confinement, So let me tell you this, right? So when I first went to the dungeon, I was in solitary confinement for 30, can't say can't say the exact date, but it was several weeks of being in the dungeon, playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? And solitary confinement is it's different. It changes your perspective on life when you're in solitary confinement, especially when you didn't do anything other than be who you are. And it got me thinking a lot though when I was in solitary. And the one thing I realized more than anything, I feel like, was that someone who's good-hearted, who's good-intentioned, who's not like the rest, who doesn't go with the status quo, so to speak. Someone that speaks out and just says, "Wait a minute, this ain't adding up." The guy or woman who yells, "The emperor has no clothes," right? Well, that good-hearted, good-intended person, they're in a catch-22 when they decide that you know, they're gonna challenge the powers that be. Because let's face it, right? I mean, you have to be there's really two things, right? when you decide that you're going to fight the good fight, so to speak, right? And you're gonna, you know, essentially become what you despise, right? You try to become what you're trying to eliminate or you're trying to dispose of. And I feel like with people like me and other people, for anybody, right? Anybody that's good intentioned and anybody that has a pure heart, an innocent heart in the sense that, they truly just want to make things better and they want everybody, to feel the prosperity, right? Cuz in some ways, I'll be honest with you guys, I have survivor's guilt and there's, things that have happened in my life that it's just something that I can't explain other than, biblical intervention, where I've been caught dead to rights in situations where, somehow, some way I come out of it vindicated and unscathed when my back's against the wall. That's when that seems to be when things go the best for me. When my back's against the wall and I'm, kind of left with do or die. I always seem to come out on top unscathed. And, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have a lot of survivor's guilt. And I would say success guilt a little bit because there's a lot of people that fight like hell and never get what they deserve, right? And there's a lot of people that go unappreciated, and there's a lot of people that, are forced because of life circumstances. They're kind of forced to bite their tongues and they're kind of forced to just accept the meager existence and, a life of destitute, right? And I've been mostly fortunate in my life. I really have. I mean, I've had a tremendously troubled childhood. I've had a tremendously troubled upbringing and a military career. And high school was a motherfucker. Middle school, all of school was a motherfucker for me. Somebody with severe ADHD and dyslexia. And somebody who, at the time I didn't realize, because how do I say, at the time when I was growing up, you know, it was all I ever knew, right? Arsonist, uncle, mom that just wasn't really cut out to be a mother, let's face it, and a dad that was never around. And having to kind of raise yourself for the most part and, kind of having to rely upon the good grace of other people to basically just like kind of take you aside and like, they see that you're wounded, they see that you're hurt, and they kind of go out of their way and try to meet you on their level, right? They try to go out of their way to understand, and that was few and far between in my life. But I will say that despite all of those, difficult circumstances, being drugged, I mean, from the time I was, boy, 3 years old, maybe four, just being drugged into submission, drugged beyond belief, just so they would, try to make you normal, try to basically tame you, try to institutionalize you, right? Because you were unfit for the institutions, the prison that they call the public school system. And to be drugged and, basically having your personality and your essence of who you are stripped away from you. It's quite a traumatic experience, or experiences rather. And so the post-traumatic stress disorder, that I, at the time, growing up, I guess I didn't really realize that's, what that was some of my issue as well. Obviously the ADHD and the dyslexia and the obsessive compulsive disorder, but also the complex post-traumatic stress disorder is more of a proper way to phrase it. And then to, you know, give up so much of your health, of your sanity, of your freedom to serve your country, right? And to be essentially thrown aside, tossed out like, yep, you're damaged goods, we're gonna cut our ties and good luck to you, right? And a lot of people look at my life and they go, man, you've been pretty lucky, you've been pretty fortunate, and I have to some extent. But being drugged out of your mind, right? And that's like when you go to the dungeon, right? Um, they do the same thing, right? They drug you out of your mind, so it rips you of your personality, and you just become you kind of become like an NPC, for lack of a better word. You kind of become someone that you're not. You become somebody who is just kind of like existing, and you're just basically wasting time. But you're you're calm, right? You're domesticated. That's the word I'm looking for. So when this domestication process is underway, and you're sitting in that 8 by 8 or 10 by 10 cell, an 8-man cell, in one particular case, right? And this is all, like I said, metaphorically speaking, right? But the best way I can describe the feeling of what, the trauma, I guess, or the traumatization, if you will, of what I've went through, not just in my life, but this whole summer. This whole summer, the trauma. The way I could explain it best is like the reality of the dungeon that they will send you to in America. Sometimes it's a solitary cell, a one-man cell where you're in your room, 6 by 8. No, probably about yeah. They say it's a 6 by 8, but no. But we'll just say, for the sake of argument, I think it's more like a 5 by 7 myself. So you set in a 5 by 7 cell, 23 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day, no TV, no window, and you just set, and you just sit, and you just sit, and you just sit. And a lot of times, the reality of these dungeons is like, there's no consistency. Some days you get out, some days you don't get out. Some days you get the drugs, some days you don't get the drugs. Some days you get the wrong quantity, or too much, or not enough, or the wrong drugs entirely. And then sometimes you are in the dungeon and you're in the 8 by 8, the 8-man cell, right? Where you have like a 8 by 8 cell and 8 beds, a lower bunk and a top bunk, right? In each corner. So 4 corners, eight beds. And you walk in, this is the experience that I basically have felt, and something that's been basically ingrained into my brain, like it's been burned, etched into my brain. And all I can think about is an 8 by 8 cell. And you walk in that cell, and you got 8 bunks you know damn well that the top bunk is suicide, essentially. You don't want to fall out of the top bunk. The so-called bed that they give you is sliding off of the top bunk, and so you walk in there and you look in corner number 1 and it's occupied. You look in corner number 2 and it's occupied, and you look into corner number 3 and it's occupied. And then all of a sudden you're looking and you look and you go, oh well, corner number 4 is unoccupied. The lower bunk, right? And then you look and you see that toilet within 2 feet of it, and you're like, man, the bunk right next to the shitter in direct parallel adjacency, right? And you're like, wow, these are my choices, huh? Go accept life next to the shitter, or go take the top bunk. And so naturally you're like, well, I ain't taking the top bunk, so I guess I'm in the cell by the shitter, right? Or I'm in the bed by the shitter. Because the toilet's never like in the exact middle. It's always, predicated on one side or another. It's always, on one side or another, more so. And so, yeah, you're just sitting there and you're like 2 feet away from somebody's ass, some complete stranger's ass. And you have to put your trust in other people. You have to put all your trust because you're in a 8x8 cell with some complete strangers and you're next to the shitter in the corner there, and you're like, wow. But you learn a lot about life real quick. You learn a lot about the lies that this country is in a lot of ways, and you start to develop a sense of, you kind of develop this I don't want to really call it a radar per se, but it's kind of like, you develop this sixth sense where you're able to kind of you're able to kind of fish out deceit. It's almost like an internal lie detector, right? And it's like a hater detector, a bullshitter, a blue falcon detector. Your blue falcon detector is like basically your lifeline. And so that doesn't leave you when you escape the dungeon, so to speak. Dungeons and Dragons, right? You escape the dungeons and you're back. You're back at your house. Or I take that back. You're you're back at your cot, right? I'll go show you guys my cot. I'll go show you how I'm living, how I'm being forced to live. But you get that cot, and you're laying on that cot, and it feels no different than if you're sitting in that 8x8 cell right next to the shitter. And you learn a lot about a man. You learn a lot about a man when you're trusting a complete stranger to not I mean, I don't want to be graphic, but there's a lot of trust that goes into that. And believe it or not, outside of a couple individuals that were, clearly ill-willed, right? There's always a couple blue falcons anywhere you go. But outside of that, you realize that a lot of humanity, if you're willing to be a team player, you're willing to play your position, you're willing to play your role, play your part, we can persevere collectively. And this isn't a socialism message. I'm all for equality and for freedom. I'm the opposite of high taxation and equity. the polar opposite. I'm on the opposite. I'm on the extreme opposite side of the spectrum. I don't believe in taxation. I certainly don't believe in taxation without representation. And I would rather have my equality before I'd ever want equity. Because equity is a lie. It goes against the law of the universe, against all of the laws of nature. And it's a devilish concept. It's the devil's bargain. Socialism, communist is the devil's bargain. And the truth is freedom. The truth is free markets and low regulation, preferably no taxes. And people will say, that's radical. Yeah, comparative to what? Comparative to this joke of a system, this oppressive system we have now? No, the sheriffs, you know, you get to see it, you see all of the, when you're sitting in those dungeons, man, and you get to see things in its entirety. You start seeing little, like, it's kind of like a puzzle, right? Every day you wake up and another piece of the puzzle it's revealing itself to you. And you start to get to know people a little bit, and it's not hard. Once you're around it, you know there are good ones and bad ones, right? Of course. And I hope people are smart enough, and I believe my audience definitely is. But I hope people are smart enough to realize, like, what I mean. Even when I give an absolute statement, or it seems like I'm giving absolute statements or using absolute language, I trust that you guys can read between the lines. And as far as a percentage of, like, good guys in the system, I would probably say it's probably a third, truthfully, of definitively good people. And then there's people, of course, that can go either way. I mean, a lot of humans, right? Most of us are, I mean, all of us, you know, have good and bad qualities about us. We have good and bad days. We have, times where we do amazing and times where we just let ourselves and everybody around us down. And, so it's case by case, it's day by day, in my view, in my viewpoint. I don't think a all good or all bad human being actually exists. But it's proportionate, right? It's all relative, right? And so, good compared to what? Bad compared to what? And so you kind of have to develop a baseline of, what's your reference point, right? Where are you starting? Where are you kind of getting the where are you kind of getting it going? What's your basis, right? You can't compare apples to oranges, and so you got to kind of know what you're starting with. And once you establish that, you'll see very quickly, that most of the prisoners, or the ones in the dungeons with you, rather, you'll realize very quickly that most of them, and upwards, I would probably say over half at least, probably between half and like 70%, 80% probably. In some cases, I feel like it might be even 85%, but you realize very quickly that at least half or more are just decent people. Like, they're good people. The people, you learn a lot about people, right? A person's character when you're sharing a 8 foot by 8 foot cell with 8 other men or 7 other men, and you realize very quickly, you know what what good character is. And you start to really, we're humans. We compare ourselves to try to figure out where we are in this world, right? And so you kind of look at your life, and you look at what you do and how you move and how you treat people, and you realize that, man, I'm a pretty good guy. Obviously, we're all flawed people, and I'll be the first to tell you that I am, but you realize that you're mostly good, and your heart's in the right place, and your mind's in the right place, and your focus is in the right place. Your focus is pure. Your focus is on, like, I'll be honest, right, guys? Like, not paying property taxes because you serve your country, it's a privilege and it's a blessing, and some people will say, well, you earned it. And yeah, you did. I mean, no doubt about it. But it's like, it's also just a privilege to be able to serve your country in that capacity. It's just a privilege to be able to swear an oath to the Constitution, a permanent lifetime oath, and, to be kind of elevated in society a little bit, and, kind of being able to be in a position to help others. It's a blessing, man. I mean, it really, truly is what makes me. It's the only time in my life, guys, you know, the only time in my life that I don't feel despair, and I don't feel trauma, and I don't feel like I gotta watch my, I have peace of mind, right? Let's say it that way. Is when I'm allowed to be in the fire pit, so to speak. I'm allowed to be in the fire ring, rather, in hell. I'm allowed to be in hell, and I'm allowed to try to help those around me, to try to make a difference, a small difference, a big difference, and everything in between. To be in a position to be able to serve people, to be of service to your fellow man. I mean, it's really it's a blessing, and it's what keeps me going. It's the only thing that keeps me going, man. To be stripped of your vocation, to be stripped of everything that you've worked so hard for, to have it stripped from you before it even truly has begun. Um, it's a blow, man. It's a chilling effect on your constitutional rights, and it's a chilling effect on your very essence, right? And so, yeah, I've been traumatized significantly, re-traumatized and re-traumatized and re-traumatized and re-traumatized, complexly traumatized, because I can't do what I love, which is to run towards the fire, run towards the hell, and to pull others out of it. And to do it without ever expecting anything in return. I just did it out of love. I did it out of pure intent and just love, you know. I truly, I don't think I'm that misunderstood. I think there's people that obviously misunderstand me. That's not a question, but I think the real, I've always believed that real recognizes real. And, it cuts across skin color, it cuts across or social economical status. It cuts across upbringing, it cuts across political parties, it cuts across rich, poor, black, white, gay, straight, have not. It cuts to the very core of humanity. And real people recognize other real people. And real people, I think most people get it. I would say probably, if I had to put a number on it, from a organizational psychology and statistical analysis standpoint, I would probably say that we're 70, 80%, maybe 90%. I would say 90 is probably too high. But I would say probably a good 70. 65 to 85% of people, maybe 60 to 85, depending on, the demographic, the pool you're surveying. But by and large, most people, and this has always been my belief, is most people get it, man. Most people do. Not everybody. And sometimes it feels like it's 50-50 or even slightly less than that. But I think overall, most people get it, man. That's what I've learned. And people recognize, when you come from the struggle, legitimate struggle, and life wasn't always so certain. And, you really kind of didn't know what was going to happen day to day, week to week, month to month. You had no stability in your life, just like, these evil individuals have done to my family. Just destroyed my child's stability, my children's stability, my wife's stability, my stability. And that's hell, man. That's hell. I mean, there isn't really enough money in the world, truthfully, that can rectify what I, as well as, countless other people have been through. We've been the victim of a municipal persecution, right? And so, yeah, while, you know, money can heal a lot, it can't fix everything, but it certainly would go a long way to facilitating what I want to do, which is to help as many people as I can, help as many neighbors as I can. Because, see, this is the difference between, you know, a genuinely decent person and a Blue Falcon, right? The Blue Falcon drives around the neighborhood and turns you in for minor infractions, right? Oh, your grass is too high. Oh, this, oh, that, right? You parked in your grass, you parked in your gravel, you parked here, you had this, or whatever, petty bullshit, right? You know, and the person like me, I'm the type that, if I notice that someone around me is struggling, I'm just gonna seek them out and help them, right? I'm just gonna, like, if I like, I'm the type of guy, right? If I'm driving around my neighborhood and I see someone has just let their house go, maybe their grass, my first assumption is not, oh, what a piece of shit. Let me turn them in and get them a citation. You know, my instinct is like, well, I'm gonna go knock on that person's door. I'm gonna have a conversation with them. I'm gonna ask them, is there any way I can help? Without an agenda, without asking or expecting anything in return. Now, obviously, if somebody wants to, you know, compensate me for my time, or, pay it forward or pay it back, I mean, sure. I mean, that's perfectly fine. But, I'd rather have people just pay it forward, because that's really what this country desperately needs. Is it just needs enough people that are willing to make that connection, knock on that door and say, "Hey, I noticed your grass is a little bit long, or I noticed you had this car that hasn't moved out of your driveway in months, and what's the deal with that? What do you need to get it fixed?" Right? Like, I'm the problem solver, in the sense of, like, I'm not gonna throw salt on somebody's wounds that, genuinely doesn't deserve it, first of all. But, one of my neighbors, right? Someone who just, like, hey, maybe their grass is getting a little long, maybe they're on, tough times, and, these oppressive taxes are killing them, and they don't have money to put it into their house, or, to whatever. And, so they kind of let things go. Maybe they're in a rut, maybe they're depressed, maybe they're suicidal, maybe they're putting a gun in their mouth, maybe they're fucking, who knows, right? You never know what someone's going through, man. You never truly know. But I'll tell you one thing, though. I mean, I'm not going to be the Blue Falcon running around tattletaling and snitching. Fuck that. We're all in this shit together, man. We have a common enemy, and that's the system. The system chews us up and spits us back out. And, collectively, they can't, it's like all the slaves, right? If all the slaves revolt at the same time, well, then guess what? Now the slaves are in charge, right? If one slave stands up, well, then the whip gets cracked, and it's to deter other people from standing up as well. But when enough people stand up, they can't crack that whip on everybody. And so that's always been my message, guys. I mean, it'll all make sense later, but it'll make sense right now if you just listen. I mean, it's very simple concept, guys. Everyone, we need multiple people standing up. We need as many people standing up as humanly possible. And then that whip can't be cracked on everybody. And that's how you shut down this tyranny. That's how you make progress with this shit, guys, is you have to be willing to fight collectively as a group, enough people. And they can't crack the whip on everybody. And so, they might try to make not might, they will try to make an example out of, the people that are, let's say, raising the most fuss or the most feisty. And, I've never understood people, man, that are in positions to help and they just choose not to. And I derive so much joy to just help lift up somebody, to give to the less fortunate, to, just help out, just to be useful to somebody else, to be of service to somebody. It's an incredible feeling. And that's all I've ever done in Wayne. It's all I've ever done anywhere I've ever went. But my neighbors, they all know the truth. They know what I've done in such a short period of time, what I took my property and what I've converted it into. And you know, people say, "Oh, you cleared out all the forest, what the hell?" And it's like, yeah, putting a pond in and dedicating it to a very special individual and making it bigger than me, and then replanting the forest so the biodiversity is enhanced for a lifetime, right? So you're not just looking at an endless fucking glob of cottonwood trees, and you get some biodiversity, and you get a pond, and you get a basin, a natural basin. It's a beautiful thing, man. I mean, it's just nobody wants to no one wants to see the vision, right? Everybody just wants to, not everybody, I don't want to use absolute language, but quite a few people, a sizable minority of people, they don't want to get it, and they don't get it. And so they just see the here and now. They don't look at the bigger picture. They don't look a couple years down the line. They're just looking at, oh, well, this is what I see right now. And, oh, you cleared out the land, you cut down the forest. And it's like, no, the forest is coming back better than, stronger than ever before. Diverse, lively. I mean, it just takes time, man. And, when you're dealing with all this bullshit, I mean, who outside of Hercules and Superman and Batman and fucking Spider-Man, Black Adam, who the fuck can get this done? I'm only one man, and I'm really a half a man to what I used to be. And so it's just sick, man. And it's just like, then you uncover irrefutable proof that you it wasn't for nothing, but there was no justification for it, right? It never was. So it was void ab initio. Ultra Varies, right? It was just completely fucked from the start. Of course, you know that instinctually, but it's another thing to have it, glaringly in your face, irrefutably in your face. There it is. It's on paper. It is the stress of when I saw it today, blew my mind. I mean, it blew my mind because I knew it, but it blew my mind that my my ops my ops was too sloppy. Didn't cover the tracks good enough, so to speak. So, and to learn that and to see that on paper, See it right there, staring you in the face the entire time. The answer to the question was was right there. It was one simple email away. All it was, just one click, boom, there it is. Now you just look through this, little Moz Podge of fucking bullshit. And there it is. There's the number right there. Page this, page that. Highlight this, highlight that. Wait a minute. Well, this doesn't add up with this, and here's this, and here's that, and here's this, and none of this adds up, and it's irrefutable. I mean, it's irrefutable. So, compel. There's a term I like to use, compelled discovery. Well, that's a constitutional right. I mean, you have a right to know what you have a right to know what you have a right to know everything, right? To have everything plainly laid out. And when that so-called constitutional right is just being blatantly shit on, yeah, it's hard to talk about, man. It's hard to even, fuck. I mean, I wish wholeheartedly that, you know, mental health drugs worked and helped people, but for the vast majority of people, they don't. And they certainly don't really help for me. I mean, as far as like, they might help with some of the agitation or whatever, but then I'm not who I am, who I was born to be, and who just simply who I am. And so you really just can't put a price on your family's peace and quiet, your family's safety and welfare, and your own and your health. And it's just, I know I sound like I'm ranting, but love you guys. Even all the Blue Falcons, I love you because you guys make me look so good, man. You guys make me look so good in comparison. Which I ain't trying to look good, man. I'm just trying to fucking help, I'm trying to help my community out, man. My property's being stolen from me illegally. Somebody's attempting to. Somebody may be attempting to steal my property under unlawful bases. And yeah, that's what it's always been about, though. Property taxes. This is what all this boils down to. axemytax.org. I'm a political martyr and a civic activist and a tax abolitionist. And yeah, apparently there isn't enough room in Wayne County for a tax abolitionist because, God, we can't have that. God forbid we have lower property taxes, and the people that are getting raped in the ass for their taxes can now have that money to spend how they choose. All that hundreds of dollars every month, they can decide if they want to put it towards their family, a new car, a new this, a new that. But instead, no, they're forced to give it to parasites, right? Complete parasites. Parasites that persecute their political opponents, that have a well-documented history of, vindictively and maliciously persecuting outspoken critics, Mark Blackwell, Chris Sanders, Anthony Miller, the list goes on. And to be, having to go into the lion's den every day as a decent person and, not become in the gentleman's club, right? Not to take membership, not to take bribery or to be the black sheep, right? Be the target, right? Which I definitely fall under the latter. And so it's not what I wished for, it's not what I envisioned, but I'm here. I'm still alive. And I really believe the truth will set us all free. The truth will set us all free. But yeah, I'm tired. I'm gonna go sleep like a sardine tonight, I guess. But I will hopefully talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care, guys. We'll be back. We'll be back soon with my work, my vocation. And we're gonna make sure that this shit never happens again. Because there's just no excuse for it, man. But you guys take care, man. Talk tomorrow.